Hey everyone, so let me officially welcome the wonderful Leslie Nicole.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so great to be back.
We're honored
Amazing.
to have you with us. I have to say, you always crush it with these sessions. And I know this is going to be no different because you've currently produced my favorite texture pack of all time. And I was saying right before we went live, I'm actually inherently such a big texture geek. So when I was going through what you built, which we're going to show nearer the end, I was just like, my jaw kept dropping basically. It's so
Oh,
amazing.
thank you, Tom. Thank you. I'm really proud of this collection, and a big shout out to Matt because it was wonderful working with him on this project.
Well, he had nothing but the nicest things to say about you. But yeah, huge shout out to Matt, Adrian on the design team, and of course you for pulling this
Definitely.
together. And today you're going to be showing us how to work with these amazing textures, how to bring them together, create some really artistic outcomes, and ultimately map that to a packaging design, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm going to really talk. I'll show you in a second. I'll get into it, but just really creating a multi-layered design with the idea of going beyond the picture frame to other uses of your artwork.
Amazing. Well, cannot wait to see it. And Leslie, without further ado, shall we jump in and have some texture fun?
All right. Okay, so today I'm going to start with these photographs I took of my flowers from my garden, and then we're going to build up layers of textures and overlays to get a design like this. I have a background in both photography and design, so I really like being able to work in a way that combines both those passions. I went to school for fine arts and did study fine arts and photography. And then I worked in photography and photographic services for about 8 years. And that turned into digital imaging, that turned into design. And I worked in design and production for about 14 years. And when I moved back to France, I was able to go back to photography. And I like bleeding the lines between those two passions.
That's really interesting, Leslie. I didn't know the full extent of your background, but that makes perfect sense because I'm always looking at your textures and thinking, how are they so sharp and like so well photographed? And yeah, you've got all this years and years experience in photography. That completely makes sense.
Yeah, that was basically my main focus. And well, I also did, drawing and painting and all that stuff, but photography was my main focus at college. And then I worked in photography and photographic services for about 8 years.
And that's
So,
awesome.
so these are flowers, like I said, I photographed, and I photographed these on my light pad. And I really like using my light pad because it's really easy to knock out the background. But I didn't have a light pad for many, many years. So you can also photograph just against white. It just takes it's a little bit harder to cut out, not a lot. And I think when you're kind of photographing for doing a design, when these florals are becoming part of the design, I think it's important to have them be very bright and crisp, at least for my style. I mean, you might be someone who likes to have a very out of focus floral, and maybe that's your style. But for me, I feel like having this very crisp, vibrant style works for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's stunning as well. What exactly is a light pad?
Oh, it's those light pads that people use for like sketching. They might put a piece of tracing paper and they use the light pad to sketch, to actually draw, analog drawing. They used to call them light tables, and when we used to look at your slides, on a light table in photography.
Mm-hmm.
Now they
Yeah.
have these slim light pads that people use for like I don't know. I got a friend who does marker work, and he, puts his sketch down and then puts a tracing paper over that, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's what they're for. But a lot of photographers use that to photograph. So there's light shining behind your subject, so that it's great for flowers in particular because you can also for certain flowers get a real transparent look.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's an iPad without the computer.
Yeah,
So
yeah, kind
it's
of.
this backlight.
It looks like it, definitely.
Yeah.
And then you light it from above too. So I have some soft boxes. And you know what? It took me years to get a light pad on softbox. Because I thought it'd be really expensive. It turns out it's not that expensive. You don't need high-end soft boxes and light box. You can get the fairly inexpensive models and get started pretty cheap.
Hmm.
So another technique I like to do, so I knew when I started this design that I wanted to use these flowers I just photographed. And a technique that I really like using is I'll take a textured photograph, I'll use a clipping mask, and I'll put that on top of another texture. And I'll show you how I do that. So I knew I wanted to do that with these flowers. So I'm going to go in and choose a texture to do that. Let me come down here to the collection. This is the Bliss collection, the Bliss texture collection, and it's all watercolor based. There's watercolors and some pigment spray as well. Where is the texture I'm looking for? There you are. So this is a cropped in watercolor from the Bliss collection. And I'm going to zoom in here because you can see this one I've already applied some of this vintage French script to just
So
be kind
stunning.
of a design element. And I said this before, but the French script or any kind of script, it's more of a mood, not a message. So we don't care what it says. It's really just a visual element.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm going to pull that on top of my flowers, holding on the shift key as I drag so that it centers the texture. And then I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. I'm going to add a layer mask. Hit B on my keyboard to select my brush. And I know I've already got a real soft brush selected. If I want black in my foreground, so I'm going to hit D. Actually, I've already had that, so I got to do X to get my black. Okay, so on my layer mask, I'm going to swipe away some of that texture because I want to bring back that original vibrancy of the flowers. And you notice I'm not being super precise, and I don't want to be precise because I still want these flowers to blend in a little bit to that background. In textured photography, you don't want to cut things out and stick them on a background. It's all about that blend. All right.
It's bringing them to life. I love it. And what I love always watching you work, Leslie, is it's very easy as a technique, what you just did, but it's so much control. You don't just dump textures over, you always kind of refine and bring out the pieces, and you're very intentional about how you work.
Definitely. Those little touches do matter. Yeah. Okay. So like I said, I want to use a clipping mask with this. So I'm going to combine this with another texture. And I'm going to start a new document. I don't have to. I could do everything on this document, but these textures are big. They're really big textures. And so it's going to make my file quite big. And just to keep things simple, I'm going to start a new document for the next section of my design. So Command New or Control New on PC. And I already have a saved template that's the size of all these textures set up. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Except I'm going to do it in 8-bit because I don't need 16-bit for my demo. Oh, I want to do sRGB as well. Let me redo that. Command New. Yeah, we're good. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to open up a different texture now from that same collection, another watercolor texture.
These colors are just giving me so much life at the minute.
Well, these colors are great, but these also, if you change these to monochromatic, they make fantastic textures for the base from another design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just the detail alone.
I started out putting a lot of monochrome versions in, but it was just, these files are so big that the collection was getting too big. Okay, so I'm going to drag this over, holding down the shift key to my new document, and let me go ahead and save that before I forget. Just do live demo and save it. And I'm going to resize this because I want it to show some of those edges. And I just did, by the way, Command T for the to get the transform tool. That would be Control T on the PC. And then I did Command 0 to fit the bounding box within the frame. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, that's pretty good, I think. Okay, so now I'm going to drag over a merged version of this. So I got my top layer selected, and I'm going to do Command Option Shift E, and translating that to PC would be Control Alt Shift E. And I'm going to drag that over, holding down the Shift key, and I'm going to temporarily turn that off and go get a mask. So, okay, we've got in this collection 29 clipping masks with 5 embellished masks. And I'll show you what I mean in a second about embellished masks. Let me zoom in here a little bit. So the embellished mask, I put in some extra fancy stuff, bits of pattern, bits of script, more watercolor spatter, some vintage notes, music notes. So just mask with some extra goodies on them.
That is stunning. And the detail and the sharpness, even when you zoom right in, it's incredibly impressive.
Thank you. Okay, hold on my Shift key so that it centers. I'm going to close that up, drag it beneath my floral layer. And now with my floral layer selected, I'm going to apply a clipping mask, and we're going to do Command Option G. Can that be Control Alt G on the PC? And that clips it to the layer mask.
Very cool.
Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here and just show you a little bit what that does. I love using clipping masks. Let's zoom out a little bit because already I'm getting some of these details from that clipping mask, you see? And also the flowers are kind of blending off into the background. There's a little bit of spatter covering this flower. And it's integrating more into the design. We're not just having these flowers plopped onto a design. We're getting some play with the background now and with other elements. So that's why I really love this technique with using a clipping mask over another texture. And then also I use kind of a mild texture for the floral layer, but then I can have more kind of a texture with more personality for the edges. Okay, I'm going to see what we got going so far. Okay, I'm going to select my watercolor background layer again because I am a more is more girl. That's my philosophy. So I'm going to go get even more French script.
I think that's a great saying when it comes to texturing and ice cream toppings.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's see. I'm picking up another overlay. That's vintage French script. So it's a transparent overlay. And I'm going to drag that, hold down Shift key again into the document. I'm going to close up this floral one. We don't need it anymore. I'm not going to save it because I don't need to. Close up that text, that overlay as well. Okay, so now I'm going to colorize that overlay. And we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to use a clipping mask, but this time we're going to do a solid color fill layer. So on the layer panel, I'm going to open up a solid color layer. And I'm going to pick this yellow color. And just for fun, I'm going to do a clipping mask in a different way. I'm going to hold down Option and hover between the two layers. And that clips it. On PC, that would be Alt. Hold on your Alt and hover.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. So I like using this way of colorizing my transparent overlays because I feel it's the most flexible. I know that a lot of people like to use the color overlay, but the problem with the color overlay is that you can't change the blending mode. You'd have to work around and be to put it in a folder, then you could change the folder's blend mode.
Yeah, so it's more control this way.
So I feel like this gives me more options faster.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put a layer mask on that because I need to clean up a few areas real quick. So I'm going to do Command 1 to zoom in 100%. And I've got my brush selected here again. I did B. It's going to zoom. I'm just going to clean up just a few areas where there's some yellow script going into my background. I want to only have that on the white areas of this texture.
Would it be possible to clip the script layer to the layer beneath it, or would that throw things out?
It's not, because this is the texture's flattened, so there's no transparent areas. Clipping masks affect the non-transparent areas of the layer below.
Right, so you'd have to select the white around the watercolor and then do it that way.
Okay, so we're done with that section. Now I'm going to put a little vintage element on here. Go back to that vintage collection, and we're going to get a vintage butterfly illustration. And I'm going to drag that over. Let's put that on the top layer. Now I do want to resize this. So usually when I'm resizing like an illustration that I may, when I'm in the middle of designing, I may want to come back later and resize that or rotate it or whatnot. So I'll turn that into a smart object so I can resize and rotate to my heart's content, and it won't affect the quality. So I like to do it by control clicking into the layer on the layer panel and do convert to smart object. In PC, of course, that would be, in PC, it's right clicking. Command T to resize, or Control T if you're on PC. About like that. So I want this butterfly to kind of blend into my design a little bit better rather than just sitting on top. So I'm changing the blend mode to hard light. And I'm just going to bring back the opacity a teeny bit to 93%. Just because I want it to kind of be a part of the design more. Okay, I'm going to take a few seconds here. I'm going to close up that graphic. I want to kind of compare where I am to the original. So I'm just going to go Window, Arrange, 2 up vertical, so I can compare. And I can see I'm a little bit off of my flower, so I'm going to do a little bit of adjusting here. I'm going to grab that floral layer and the clipping mask and pull them down a bit.
That's such a great tip with the windows. Actually, I've never seen anyone do that in our sessions.
Well, it can be tricky to remember exactly where things are placed, so I thought it would be a good thing to just show real quick. And of course, when I'm designing, I don't need to do this because I don't, I'm just kind of doing it by eye. But
do you mind just repeating the steps for that window technique?
Sure. You just do Window, Arrange, and then tile 2 up vertical. And the same thing to release it, I'm going to do Arrange, consolidate all the tabs. And then I go back.
There you go.
If you need to compare something to something you've already done. Okay, so I really love using watercolor spatter in my designs. So I'm going to go pick up some spatter from the collection. Let's see where those spatter. There we go. I have both acrylic and watercolor spatter in the collection. I'm going to be getting some watercolor spatter for this. And let's see.
Oh, these are so much fun.
Okay. Drag that over. Place it about like there. These watercolor spatter are pretty big. They're nice sized. And I'm going to change that blend mode to overlay. So it's a real subtle change, but it just gives me a little bit more texture to the image, a little more dimension, and I'm getting some spatter over the flowers as well, and I like that. All right, another thing I like to do when I'm doing a photographic design is to put a little pattern in the design. And I have some pattern overlays in the collection. And this is a pattern I created from a drawing I did, a hand drawing. Close that out. Now I'm going to first colorize this pattern by doing the same thing, adding a solid color fill layer. And I'm going to choose this pink color. Clip that there. Now I'm going to leave that at normal blend mode, 100% opacity. I just want a little bit of this pattern showing. So I'm going to create a layer mask, but I'm going to hold on Option as I click so that it fills it with black. And actually, you know what? I'm going to do that same trick again where I'm going to show both frames because it makes it easy for me to see what I revealed. So window, arrange to up vertical and get my brush. I need to make that a little bit bigger. And this time I want white selected. So I'm going to do X to get the white. And now I'm going to just reveal some of that pattern. And I want to go over the flowers a little bit too. I'm just putting a little bit in there, but I think this also, putting a little pattern is another thing you can do to kind of bridge that gap between photography and design.
It's amazing how well they work together.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to consolidate all the tabs. All right, great. Okay, okay, so go continue with my more is more philosophy. We're going to get some more spatter. Watercolor spatter. Drag that over. And I'm going to place that around there. So it's covering my flowers a little bit. And I wanted to zoom in real quick and show you this spatter because even though it's basically yellow and ochre, you have this full range of hue and vividness because this color is directly from the original watercolor. And that you don't see that a lot in watercolor spatter graphics because it's a lot trickier to do, but I think it really makes all the difference.
Yeah, that's a gorgeous technique, actually.
Let's see, let's do some more spatter.
From where I'm sitting, though, this is gold, Leslie, as always. Love watching your work.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so I've placed this spatter here. It's quite big. I know I'm going to resize it and rotate it. So I'm going to make that into a smart object as well. And again, I did that by control clicking into my layer in the layer panel. And don't hit the actual image, but off to the right in the, not there. Okay, so Command T or Control T, and I'm going to rotate clockwise. Then I'm going to hold on my shift when I get close so that it'll automatically snap to 90 degrees. And I'm going to resize it. Let's see. That's about right. Okay, so I'm going to change that blend mode to darker color. I wanted to blend in a little bit, but I didn't choose multiply because I still wanted some vibrancy to the color. Okay, I'm going to close up that spatter. Okay, I have one more element to place. And that's another vintage element. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to get this little vintage dragonfly illustration. And again, I know I'm going to be resizing this little guy, so I'm going to turn him into a smart object. Rotate him a little bit and resize down a little bit. Okay, that should be good. And again, I'm going to colorize this using a color fill layer. I'm going to show you something a little bit fun. I do this so much. I created an action to do all those steps for me. And I always have it loaded. So I just hit my action. It adds a color fill layer. It clips it to the bottom and it changes the blend mode to multiply because that's what I use the most. So then all I have to do is double click the color and pick the color that I want. Actually, I think, is that the right color? Let's do that color. Okay. Let me move him over a little bit. Okay, and then I just do a couple of fine tuning at the end. I'm going to do an adjustment layer, hue saturation adjustment layer, and just pop it up a little bit, +8. And also a levels adjustment layer. And I'm just going to do it a wee tiny bit deepening of the midtones, just a wee tiny bit. All right, so that's that design.
Yeah, I just want to say, wow, I love this piece so much. It makes me super happy.
Cool. Okay, so now we're going to talk about going beyond the picture frame. I love the idea of having art in all parts of our life, enjoying our art in clothing, in homeware, in stationery. I love thinking beyond just putting your art in a frame. So when I created this design, Matt told me, you know what? I see this related to perfume. So I did a mock-up with that. I did a couple other mock-ups, and I'm going to open those up for you now. I'm going to close that one because I don't need that one anymore. Just hold up, just keep my original open. I'm going to go back here and get my, let's see, where did my demo go? There we go, my demo files. Let me go ahead and open up my mock-ups. So this was my perfume bottle mock-up.
Amazing.
Packaging. And then I did, last year, actually it was this year for my birthday, I got a scented candle with a beautiful design on it. I thought, oh, I want to do some of those. So I did a scented candle with its packaging, the same design. And I did cropped in the design a little bit differently for this mock-up. And
it's amazing how much it brings the design to life even more, right?
Yeah, it's so much fun just to enjoy this art in everyday life things. So shopping bag and a dress.
Stunning. Summer vibes, Leslie.
Summer vibes, yeah. Actually, yeah, from the name of the perfume, Summer Dream, Dreams of Summer. Red
Oh, there you go. Nice.
Summer.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that? I love mock-ups. I love being able to visualize how something might look on an actual product.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. They're so important, and especially if you're doing client work or something like that. Imagine showing this to a client. They can really imagine it versus just a flat design. Yeah. I love it. So, Leslie, I just want to thank you for such a wonderful demonstration. Let's give it up for Leslie. What an amazing second session of today. That was great.
Oh,
love the outcome.
For being here. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Stunning, honestly.
Thank you so much to Design Cuts for having me on.
We love having you on. Textures just make me happy, honestly. And prepare yourselves. If you love textures, wait for what you're about to see. I just grinned my whole way through looking at this back. Beautiful. Yeah, so this is the complete Inspirational Textures and Elements collection. As I said, this is a brand new product, entirely new. Every element is brand new. And this is in collaboration with Design Cuts. This is months in the making, right, Leslie? I'm I was sorry to hear you actually, I think, gave yourself RSI making this pack because you spent so many hours diligently working on it.
Well, I had about 4 days where I had a flare up of a repetitive stress injury that, if I push myself too hard, it flares up now and again. But a little rest and I'm back to normal again.
I'm so
But
glad to hear that.
I mean, besides, I've actually been working a lot of this watercolor for really 6 months beyond when I started the collection. So it's really more than 5 months making it.
It's hugely impressive. So yeah, Leslie is about to talk us through this pack, but if you're wondering where you can get it, it is the shiny green button below this live stream. I highly recommend opening that tab up right now as Leslie talks us through. It's available for just $19. It's 50% off. It's only available at Design Cuts, and this is a world exclusive. This has not been seen anywhere before. It is just dropped, and what you're about to see will blow your mind. So Leslie, please take it away.
All right. So I did create this package to really be both complementary elements, but also to have maximum versatility. So this could be used for photography, to design, and even scrapbooking. So it has a really wide range of uses. But at the same time, the elements work together. The textures and overlays are sized pretty much the same. So this first section is an overview. So I'm going to skip over to the details real quick. There are 4 texture collection. This first one is Bliss, which is watercolor textures and water-based. There's some spatter and spray. There's some zoomed in
Stunning.
details.
Again, what I love about your textures, I think they're the crispest in the industry, to be honest. They are so high resolution, it's so sharp and detailed.
Well, that's really important to me, actually, to have really crisp. I mean, you can get rid of detail, but you can't put it there,
Mm-hmm.
So that's that perfume bottle we did and the design we just did. And then you can also just use it, for photography. These are also photographs from my garden, this peonies with texture from the Bliss collection, and a little bit of an ornament too. I have some ornaments in the collection. You see this little bit of a scrolled ornament on the side there.
Stunning.
And there's the watercolor spatter. And in the watercolor spatter, I have both, I have transparent color, flattened color, and black and white versions, black and white transparent. So these are also photographed on my light pad, these tulips, and then just, a little spatter to kind of integrate the design. And the next collection is Bloom, and these are acrylic painted textures. And we have some real bright colors here too, but these are also fantastic. I included a few of the monochrome version because they're really great to either just give a little bit of tone. You can just use the monochrome, the grayscale on overlay or soft light, and you can give a photograph just a little bit of a painted feeling to it. And
it's so lovely, and
great.
it's such a rough, gritty texture behind them.
And it also works in the monochromes are also great starts to a design.
Mm-hmm.
So here's some zoomed in details of the Bloom collection. The painted acrylics. I put in some acrylic spatter, so you could use those because this acrylic spatter is a little bit different than watercolor.
I love this. Yeah, I think this was my favorite example from the whole pack. It's so cool. I want to buy that soap.
Those are mostly black and white overlays with one color version of all of them together. Mm-hmm. And then, I've used that same, I've used it in both a very design outcome, and then I've also used the acrylic spatter in a photograph, to add a little more texture using the acrylic texture there.
Beautiful.
So here's a little bit of a zoomed in detail of using that spatter on an acrylic. Okay, so Magpie is what I call my eclectic essentials. And these are kind of like just base textures, or, kind of classic textures you might need for either adding some texture to your photography or starting to design. I have crackled paint, I have rubbed pastel, I have stone walls, I've got some painted crackle, gold paint, stone walls, vintage paper. So it's just a real nice, a lot of base textures that you could use for a lot of different applications. Here's some zoomed in details of crackled textures, some paper, vintage canvas paper, some glass emulsion, stone. So those are just real nice textures to have.
You know what this pack is? It's like getting 10, 15, 20 texture packs in one. And that's what I love about all of the exclusive products. They're so big, they're so robust and comprehensive, all of what we've seen this week. It's more like a bundle than it's like a product.
Yeah,
it's like a
it
bundle
really
of
is.
products.
It's a bundle of collections, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, normally those texture collections would be individual collections, that would be for sale. And then we have our masks, and I have a variety of different masks you could do different things with. There's spatter masks, there's emulsion masks, there's watercolor masks, there's gouache masks, there's roller masks. And then we have our embellished masks. And by the way, these embellished masks are made with the elements in the collection. So they're kind of examples of how you can go crazy yourself and kind of have fun. And then one of my favorites is edge overlays are so powerful. They're such a powerful addition to your design and your photography.
They're so useful. They come up all the time, don't they?
They're just a way to really add drama and depth immediately to an image or a design. So for instance, I took this monochrome version of a watercolor texture. I added this watercolor edge overlay, and then boom, you have a new texture. You have more depth to that texture. And they're really easy to do. They're really easy to use. And I have included documentation for making, for colorizing transparent pings. And then you can just use an overlay to burn the edges. You can either burn the edges with an overlay, or you can add a decorative element. And then grunge overlays, I included these because they've got I've got some more crackle in here, stone, pastel, and these are just really great to add more details. Like here's a texture plus a crackle overlay, so you get a crackle texture. Tell me if I'm
Can't believe it's still going. No, this is great.
And then the Bohème texture collection is basically, this collection is using all the elements of the collection to create new textures. So it's kind of showing you, hey, here's what you can do. Besides the fact that it's, you can use these textures. So this stripe one has, a striped overlay. There's some vintage elements. There's watercolor elements. There's edge overlays being used here. There's grunge overlays. There's one here mixed here. Here's some zoomed in areas. So the Bohème texture collection is a great inspiration for, this is what you can do with elements of this collection. You can combine textures, combine elements.
Oh, look, there's more. This is what I mean. This is nuts.
Also vintage collection with tons of yummy vintage French elements here. There's ephemera, there's overlays. So here I created a little travel journal design. This is actually using a Bohème texture, with the Bohème texture uses elements from the collection.
Well, you know what I noticed, Leslie? Every single part of this pack goes together. I don't know how you did it, but whether it's the grungiest element or, vintage texture or some light watercolor, somehow you can combine any of the pieces and they just fit together aesthetically. It's incredible.
Yeah, I really worked on that. And Matt will attest to the fact this actually started out being a 10 gigabyte collection, and I had to pare it down to, I think it's like close to 5 now.
Wow, that's ridiculous.
It's jam-packed and big textures. I mean, these are some really big elements and textures. So, here I've combined elements of the collection to come up with a design, a t-shirt design. That's actually this element over here. Oh, it's actually a similar one that's also included in the collection. So vintage can be used in really cool modern ways too.
Mm-hmm.
This is a detail from the Bohème collection. So it has some vintage, has some pattern. It has some grunge overlay. And then I have some, I call ornamentals with vintage ornamental flourishes, florals. So you can, add those to your designs. There's a few border frames, vintage border frames, flourished, your pattern overlays. I'd like to eventually add more pattern overlays to this collection. I have a lot of the iconic patterns, chevron, trellis, stripe, diamond. I'd like to
Well,
add some more.
we love being able to update customers where we
Yeah,
can
I really want to
say
add some more
something's
of
been
this.
added in the future. Yeah.
I want to add some more of those hand-drawn motif elements.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I have a bonus layered TIFF file. That's going to be the subject for another tutorial you'll have that layered file in front of you so you can really look at that as that'll be a future tutorial. And I created this design with one of my flower images from that bonus. And actually this version of the bonus layer is also provided as a texture. So it's layered
Amazing.
and textured. So here's another application of that.
It's so humongous.
All right.
Wow. That is so amazing. I'm going to close that window. So welcome back to Leslie. But you can see why we're so excited about this pack, and you can see why it took over 6 months of incredible hard work on Leslie's part. This is just simply one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I love it, Leslie. I feel like this is just, me set for years because I love working with textures personally. I feel like whenever I need a texture or any kind of element like this, I'm just going to default to this pack. It really has everything. It's incredible.
Well, what I'm really excited about is seeing what other people are going to come up with this, because I mean, time and time again, you guys just amaze me what you come up with, your creativity. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to also just, I made this collection so we could really have a lot of tutorials on this, and I can teach you a lot with this as well.
Leslie, thank you again for such a huge effort with this pack. I think it's going to change the texture game. You've just set a new bar of quality, in my opinion. So huge well done to you, and shout out as well to our design team.
Cuts really pushed me to take this, so I'm really appreciative of that. I love it. Thank you for having me on again, Tom.
It was a wonderful collaboration. I know they love working with you. So thanks again, Leslie. We can't wait to have you back in the future. And to be honest, I'm sure there's going to be many more live sessions just showing off what you can do with this enormous pack, because there's so much in there. We'd love to have you back and do some more demos.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Tom.
Love it. Chat soon. Thank you. Bye.